Hey, Lynn.
Hi, Tony.
Hi. Hello.
Heard there was a petting zoo over at Flash Road
Oh, today?
on Easter, I think.
There was the Easter egg hunt on Saturday that
Oh,
had a petting zoo.
I heard it was awesome.
It was, at least my 7-year-old grandson thought so.
And Deborah's grandchildren loved it.
Yeah, it was very cute.
Were there like uh sheep and
Yeah,
bunnies?
there were teeny animals that weren't scary, and there were a lot of them, like
Wow.
sheep and goats and
Yeah.
pigs and stuff like that.
Oh, we should do that more often. That's great.
Who sponsored it, Nancy?
It was the PTO.
Uh-huh. Let's see.
Great idea.
Yeah, it was wildly successful.
Yes.
My grandson got a golden egg too. He was thrilled.
I would have gone if I'd known. I love baby animals.
You might have had to fight off the kids to get to
Well,
them.
I would have been careful.
Apparently it was very crowded.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, it was a beautiful day too.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. So Lynn is
Yep. So it's, I just said beautiful weather seems to be a bit rare lately, but
yeah,
it's coming. It's coming.
good the kids had it.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm Lynn Spencer. I'll call this meeting of community preservation to order tonight, April 1st. Very apt. Joining joining tonight are committee members Nancy Catalmo, Austin Antrim, Ellen Goldberg, Dave Wilson, and me. I did get word that Paul Spurn and Jimmy Dolan are not available tonight. So this is our group. We also welcome Deborah Warren and Barbara Beatty from FinCom and Michelle Capano from the Housing Production Committee. I see that we have Josh Antrim on the screen as well. And for a moment, I thought I saw Trish Aldrich, but maybe she'll come back. I know you'll be shocked. I don't have any minutes tonight from last meeting. Last time we had 4 sets of minutes to pass. So, give me a break for tonight, but I'll get the minutes ready for you. So I asked for this meeting because we had a meeting with FinCom on Thursday night. Paul Spurn and I attended. There were some very constructive questions that were raised, some trenchant observations, and I thought it would be useful with 3 of the articles in particular to revisit them tonight so we could offer greater clarity in the supporting statements. I sent late in the day my suggested edits, but I don't know, Ellen, is this something that you could pull up on the screen?
Yes, I actually didn't know that you attached edits to that email. I was just opening up the last draft that I sent.
No, at 6:30 or so.
Okay, hang on. Oh, okay, great. So that's your edits. Let's proposed edits to the articles. Okay. Yep, I'll open that in a second, and then maybe we'll put it in red line mode.
It is. I did it in tracking mode.
Oh,
So
perfect.
I
Okay.
want to say that there are 3 articles in particular that I'm asking us to revisit tonight. At the end of last week, I think maybe on Thursday evening or on Friday morning, I sent out some of the, some information about this. But we'll start with the first one, which is one that requires some attention, I believe.
Yep, I'm just going to save this as a new document so we can incorporate anything that comes up.
Okay.
And then
um
Thank you, Ellen. Thanks, Ellen.
Ellen, can you just zoom in? Yeah,
Yep.
thanks.
Is that big enough for everybody? Okay.
I would also invite, because Deborah and Barbara have been stalwarts in attending our meetings. They have been very discreet in comments during our meetings, except to be encouraging, which I certainly have appreciated. But I certainly would welcome any comments from them tonight, in addition to what I will be sharing with you. Tony, you were also in attendance at the FinCom meeting, and I appreciate your being here tonight to, in particular, look at this article as well as the other two that we have in mind. What I
Mhm.
wanted to do here is to make sure that people understood that the Flash Road master plan, because there were frequent comments raised about, why do you want to do a master plan after you have already been allocating funds for specific projects like the tennis courts, or later on, as we'll see in these articles, the Little League lighting? And I wanted to reinforce the fact that the open space and recreation plan, which was prepared by that committee and adopted by the town meeting and endorsed by the state as an acceptable plan, laid out important guidelines, or some important goals for recreation. And that in addition to that plan, and Nancy, I will need the date on that. In addition to that plan, there was a predecessor plan prepared by a group prepared by a group in 2017 that looked at all of the recreation areas in the Nahant, in addition to the Flash Road area. So making the point of there were predecessors documents, I think, is important, because naturally FinCom is always saying, is this part of a master plan? Is this part of a larger plan? Did I catch that correctly, Tony?
Yeah, I think you did. I think, and like you said, I hope Barbara and who else from the FinCom is on tonight?
Deborah.
Oh, Deborah. All right, so please jump in. But I think, like, in general, what I heard was what you just said. And kind of like the horse, is in front of is behind the cart, so to speak, or a cart in front of the horse, where we've invested in Flash Road, tennis court, pickleball courts. We're asking for funding for lighting. Goddard Drives, trail came into play. Even the Johnson School Boulder Scramble is adjacent to that property. And so,
Mhm.
I tried to help articulate what the goal of this was. Our hope is not to look at this area as a blank canvas, but to more so look at this area of, the basketball courts and the tennis courts aren't moving. The Little League field's not moving. The outdoor playground for the Johnson School isn't moving. The playground next to the basketball courts isn't moving, but there is this other space that's kind of in between. And the parking needs to be looked at. The Babe Ruth field, moving the soccer field away from the golf course, potentially adding a network of trails through this area to give users options of which way they want to walk through it. Improving the safety of the DPW yard, things of that nature. So the approach when I filled out this application was, to look at kind of everything in between, the investments we've already made and the things that, we know we're likely not going to change. But there's still a lot of freedom, if you will, in between all that stuff. And that we're going to do that through a public process. So I think if we were able to articulate that better up front, it would solve for some of those comments that I heard, but like I said, Barbara and Deb, does it sound like I'm approaching it correctly?
Well, the other thing is, I wasn't clear if the FinCom had actually seen these articles before the meeting or if they were seeing them live in the meeting. So,
That is my mistake. I got them from Ellen and I sent them. And what I neglected to see was that there was an error message saying they had not been sent.
yeah.
So,
So that better when you explain that to me, and I have to tell you, Deborah, at 3 o'clock in the morning after that meeting, I thought, oh, that's probably why it was a little bit of a rocky road at times.
But you know
Be-
what? That's actually, that's okay. We got first impressions,
yeah, we got
which is-
first impression.
which
So,
is good to hear.
so Paul in his text, and Ellen, if you scroll down a little bit, Paul in his text, I think, did a good job of just not, you're going past. I just want to get to this portion of it. Stop there, please. When we get to this portion of it, some of the elements that Tony has just described are brought out here. So I think the question, I think the point is that I wanted to sort of say, help be clear that, there had been some predecessor plans. We've got some fixed elements of this, but there's more opportunities for actually clarifying and improving recreation facilities over there.
Lynn, may I make a
Yes.
suggestion?
Sure.
Why don't you take that second paragraph and put it first? It is now time to update the analysis of recommendations of the 17-acre Flash Road recreational master plan. Right, it's, like, that just frames it for people right away.
Mm-hmm.
this is being contracted out to, is it Halverson or is that another one of the projects?
This was Ty and Bond Halverson design for this project. Yes, Deborah.
Okay.
I don't know if we should actually specifically mention that firm or make it clear that a professional firm has been
No,
consulted.
I don't think we need the name. I was just curious about, actually, this is sort of a radical idea. This planning could not have been done in-house by Nahant people. No, you needed a professional to get the proper information.
Tony, I'll let you answer that question.
Yeah, we don't have any planners on staff. Certainly part of what the open space committee discussed when I brought this to their attention and sought their support was that we wouldn't be able to do a lot of this stuff in-house. When it comes to organizing and running the public meetings, when it comes to evaluating previous plans or mapping for flood zones and things of that nature, understanding different types of elements that come with certain types of recreational opportunities, whether that be irrigation or drainage or required spacing, all that type of stuff. It really requires a professional firm to be a part of it.
Okay, I understand that. Thanks.
Yep.
Ellen, I would invite you if you want to do online editing right now, that you could actually.
I mean, do you agree with my putting this up front, to kind of frame the context a little bit right away? Does that help, or is it kind of busy work?
Anyone?
I like that idea. I think it makes sense.
Okay. So let's just edit it first and then I'll move it.
We also have we have the
so the notification recreation, right. And now time to update the analysis and recommendations of the Nahant, open space and recreation plan adopted.
It was 2022 is the date of it.
Great, thank you.
In 2022.
So Nancy, I didn't find it on the town website, or I should say Tony and Nancy. Where should I be looking?
It's, I haven't looked for it any time recently, but it definitely should be on there.
Mhm.
I'd have to look for it myself.
but this is Trish. I believe it's in the open space and recreation committee section, materials.
Okay, I opened that up, Trish, and I saw lots of minutes. You're very good at minutes.
It's there somewhere. I found it.
Okay, good. Thank you. I just didn't spend enough time looking, but
There's
thank you, Trish.
a
And thanks
tiny-
for coming into this meeting with such short notice. I do apologize for being late in the game there.
Happy to be here. I didn't have to wash the dishes.
Oh, good.
There's
Keep
a
that in
tiny-
mind.
There's a tiny edit. You've got two, go up to the top, you've got two its. See that? You need, yeah.
Yeah,
Good.
because I had actually done that edit, so she she did it fix well. Okay.
So there's changes to the supporting statement that are gonna help when we speak to this to the finance committee, but also, this will be included in the book that residents are going to see. The finance committee advisory report recommendations. We also have supporting, I guess, documents that I don't know if they would be included in the book. But we have the master plan proposal that I received from Ty and Bond, which we could share with the finance committee for their review. And I have that, sketch that I made up on Paint to kind of show. I can share my screen if you want, just to show this picture. I don't know if it would help Deb and Barbara.
Oh, there we go.
There you go.
Sorry, I was trying to click on the chat because I saw that there was something that came through.
So this is this is what I sent to Ty and Bond to kind of explain to them what we were trying. Hopefully, this is kind of what we're looking at. The soccer field currently sits right up against the golf course. This old Babe Ruth field, the dugouts were removed because they were rotted and became a safety issue. This infield is no longer an infield. It hasn't been used as a baseball field in forever. So we were
Right.
thinking about potentially removing this and moving the soccer field, improvements to the parking lot, squaring off the DPW, and and then you have Heritage Trail that's going to walk through this area too. I don't know if this type of thing would be helpful for the finance committee, not so much for their book, but to help them kind of see it rather than just reading the words.
Well, perhaps this is a good time for me to ask Barbara and Deborah what the next steps would be with FinCom for these articles.
I think we're going to discuss them in our meeting on Thursday, according to Bob,
Yes,
What time is that?
6:30.
6:30.
So Tony and Michelle, that's a conflict with another meeting that's been arranged for 6:30.
It is.
That's unfortunate. Ugh, right.
For the people who were unfortunately not able to attend the FinCom meeting, what was this tabled for more discussion with more information? Was it unrecommended, or what was the outcome of the discussion of this?
I think they were just hearing Lynn walk through the articles that were being recommended by the CPC. They weren't voting
Okay,
on recommendations yet.
thank you.
Yeah, that's
But
correct.
I think there was sufficient. This was a 2-hour meeting, folks, for 7 articles. So you should actually understand this was not an easy walk.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's important. I mean, I feel like I don't want to actually not attend that meeting and be able to defend these articles because I feel like it's in a defensive position.
Well, Barbara and Deborah, since you guys are here and you'll obviously be on the Thursday night call, um, if you can help us understand, if you think we are capturing the sentiment of the committee accurately, and if you think we're responding to it the right way, and then hopefully you can, help speak on the CPC's behalf at your meeting, because the conflict in meeting is a housing production plan meeting, which Lynn and Michelle sit on. I might be able to bounce back and forth between the two meetings, but I don't think Lynn, Lynn, you're going to be pulled in two directions that night.
Right.
Well, Lynn,
We can
Lynn-
certainly, Deborah and I can certainly help speak with this. My sense, and Deborah, please correct me. My sense was that there was the cart before the horse question about, and now about, here we're looking at other things we're going to be putting in now, and then why shouldn't we have done this sooner? So I think you may get a question. You have the 2022, right? So this is
Right.
very soon thereafter. I'm wondering if there's, and I think it's very important to link the two. That's what I heard at our meeting, is a question about, well, we already did one study. How does this follow from? How does this flow from? Why is this necessary? Let's link them.
Mhm.
Does that sound right, Deborah?
yeah,
Peter Barbara was concerned about the,
right. Well, that was also part of the discussion about the housing production plan, about the cart versus horse thing, but we'll get there.
We
Yeah.
will.
Yes, we will.
Well, and it's similar. They're similar because, the open space plan previously done, the housing production plan that's, nearing the finish line, are both more higher level general perspectives of the entire community and those specific subject matters.
Right.
Whereas this rec plan and the housing development study kind of narrow it down and get into specifics on a particular parcel.
Yeah, it's the analogy might be looking at 10,000 feet versus 3,000 feet, or maybe
Mhm.
1,000 feet. So, you start, very in a very macro sense, and then you get, micro, you get further detailed.
So
Right.
this latest iteration will be, is more granular. Is that correct?
No, it's actually the same. Yeah, it would be more granular. Yes, absolutely. So if you look at the open space and recreation master plan, it's global. This 2017 recreation plan was global. It looked at all of the areas in Nahant, just as Pete Barbara raised. But this really gets, very detailed on drainage, relocation, boundaries, conflicts. I don't know if we mentioned the golf course, but we really should, because that's a big one.
Well, you certainly did in our meeting the other night.
I did, yes.
yeah, and the safety issue there came up because there are children on these fields, and the potential of defining that and thinking about arrangements there is important.
Yeah, I would just agree with what everyone has said, plus put in the idea that we're using so there's a philosophy in the open space plan, and this is working on some of the details and also bringing in outside people with expertise in landscape architecture and understanding the complexity of that area, that the other plans couldn't never have gone into.
Yeah, I think my overall reaction was more to the price tag of this continuing the planning. And Lynn, I guess it was explained very well how, or Tony, I guess, Tony did, why this is necessary. I guess my only question is more the landscape architecture part. I think the topography stuff and all of that, I understand is technical. Maybe the two are closely related and in fact, you know, inextricable one from the other. If you see,
And that's what Ty and Bond offers, Deborah. They're both landscape architects, soil engineers, hydrologists, conservation. You know, it's a full service firm.
there's plenty of technical
Yep.
expertise that we're making use of. Okay.
Yep. But we should emphasize the technical side as well, perhaps in this
sure.
language.
And
Yeah.
I think, Lynn, what you just said, I think is very persuasive. You listed their specific areas of expertise, which is not mentioned here. You said hydrology. What were the others you listed? Those are important.
Yeah. Those
What-
cut plenty of ice with me. I think those are very important too.
Thank you. What were, you said hydrology? What were some of the other-
Soil characteristics,
Soil characteristics.
conservation.
conservation? And you said one more, I think.
Well, there's probably more, but right now I'm spinning off the top of my head. So
But
how
I-
about
Add
get-
those. Those specific expertise areas are important to list here because they just clicked in for me what it is that we're doing here that's specifically both new and important and technical. See what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, we can grab a lot of this from the scope of work that they provided us. They talk
Yeah.
a lot about base map preparation, site analysis, kickoff meetings, public meetings, opportunities and constraints, comprehensive summary outlining resource areas, regulatory constraints, permit requirements, recommendations for navigating regulatory process and ensuring compliance, program development, master plan, conceptual alternative based on public feedback.
so Tony, perhaps
Yeah.
you can actually give us a paragraph
Hmm.
that we can add to
Right,
this.
exactly. What I'm thinking is, it is now time to update the analysis and recommendations of the Nahant Open Space Recreation Plan adopted on it with a master plan, period, and then the details. And then this Nahant's commitment, starting right here, could be the second paragraph. But the detail that you just provided could go adopted on into with a master plan.
A
Mhm.
master plan for the Flash Road recreation area. I mean,
There
they're
we go.
addressing two different geographic areas
Yeah.
in town.
Yes.
That is absolutely true.
So there we go. So it is now time to update the analysis of recommendations with a master plan for the Flash Road recreation area. And then you could and then the next part could be what Tony provides.
But in addition to what Tony offered were the technical skills, in addition to the, permitting and program discussion, et cetera. Make sure to mention the hydrology, the soil analysis, right? Those are the very technical, scientific, if I may say so, right? I think it's important to list those as being specialties of this plan, because we didn't do that before.
No, I didn't realize. I thought it was more I actually thought it was some aesthetics as well as various, uses and layout, but this is really gritty stuff. I would even maybe put some of those things in bulleted list, because I think you need to call them out.
Right.
There's
Okay.
also that I'm also reading here, I forgot to mention grant opportunity review. So they're going to conduct a comprehensive evaluation to identify potential grant and loan opportunities supporting the enhancement of Flash Road Park with specific focus on park revitalization, community enrichment, trail and pathway development. Goes on and on. So let me I think I sent this to the committee already, but I'm going to resend it right now just in case.
Well, how about you draft this section, Tony?
Can I,
That way you can get off the hook for redrafting the whole article, the whole application.
I will try. I will definitely try.
Okay.
can I get rid of this last sentence here, the detailed one to be drawn up by professionals? Or do you want to leave it somehow?
Well, I think that's actually good that people know
Okay.
that they're,
Sometimes update with a master plan, maybe, okay, add a bulleted list. So
the
I'm just trying-
professionals, the expertise of the professionals are some of the things we're listing, but I think people do want to know that they are going to be very much consulted
Mhm.
and have a chance to have input on this. It's not just professionals coming in and saying X, Y, and Z.
Right,
Right.
That if there are going to be trade-offs between hydrology or whatever it is here, the town is going to be able to give input. So I think it's both.
There we
It's
go.
it's the, you might even say it, it's the
I got it.
balance.
Yeah, I got it right here.
What Tony said about the grants is also somewhat compelling to
Yep.
me. And I would make sure that is highlighted.
Okay.
Agree.
Good points. Good
This
points.
plan should be, this plan will be.
Yeah.
Drawn up by professionals who will look at the needs, uses and preferences, found people of the area. And
I
then,
think you want to use the word with input from. People like to know that they're going to have an input into.
general public,
Yeah, something
yeah.
like that.
Oh, it's absolutely. There's gonna be multiple public meetings.
Yeah, the word input is
and
very,
collaboration, input from and collaboration with.
yeah,
Yeah, that
exactly.
sounds good.
Yeah,
Because otherwise people think that people are this, the technical folks are going to come in and tell us what we have to have.
yeah,
But
yeah,
it's a collaborative process plan.
yeah. Okay, so then after that would come the stuff that Tony would provide.
Mhm.
Then this, which we already had left. And then we didn't make any changes, then we made some changes down here. Would you say it was 2022, right? So
Two.
it should be
2022.
Do you mean adopted or adapted?
Adopted,
Adopted.
sorry.
That's me writing fast.
Can I make a small point? Right in the very beginning, it talks about updating the open space and recreation plan. In my opinion, this isn't updating it. We just did it in 2022.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be updated. It's like building on or
Yeah,
implementing. That's just not quite the right
Expand.
word.
Right.
yeah, expand upon,
I
yeah.
had the
Well, is
exact
it
same
operation?
feeling.
Is it essentially operationalizing it? Is it like, taking the advice and recommendation from that to come up with a plan, or is it,
I think what Trish said is pretty good.
what did Trish say?
What did you say, Trish?
I said to build on it or that, and I
It's
said
time to
something else.
build on the analysis and recommendation?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's good. Expand or build on or something like that. Yeah. I totally agree.
Build upon the analysis?
yeah.
So if you just say build on the analysis and recommendations, blah, 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 and then go on with, when it starts the phrase with a master plan, if you say with a detailed master plan for the Flash Road area, that might get
Yeah.
that macro to micro.
Yep.
Yeah.
That
Cool.
does it.
Better.
I think in the discussion, we might also make an analogy to a smaller project, but the Lodge Park thing, where we had an expert come in and critically analyzed the area, who knew a lot about things we didn't know about, had a public meeting to discuss it. That this is a kind of a process that we should go through in town for looking at a lot of things, building on the open space recommendations.
Nancy, but I don't think we should mention Lodge Park for
Okay.
a variety of reasons
I
that I'm
agree.
sure people know.
All
Just
right. I meant the process, but
got
that's
it. Process, great. I'm just saying, you know what
Okay.
I'm saying.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Nancy. You know, something along the lines of, you know, the process, describing the process as, you know, getting more specific, you know, kind of zooming in on a particular parcel, taking the next step from a larger general overview master plan to a more specific property master plan. You know, I see what you're saying, like
Yeah, I mean,
explaining it a little bit.
including the experts and including the public in this whole big process.
Yeah, well
Yeah.
put, Nancy.
Yeah.
Right. So I have Austin Antrim for an hour. So do I still have you, Austin? Otherwise, I am going to be out of quorum. Are there any other comments about this? Because I've got two more that are also juicy and bitey.
I'm just gonna go ahead and forward the tie and bond proposal to the finance committee so that it's something that they can review or look at. You know,
Could you
prior to the
do that
meeting.
in connection with this, though? I would like the two to actually be paired.
Sure, yeah.
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 Yeah, that would be a very good idea. And Barbara and Deborah, would it be helpful to have Tony's plan diagram, perhaps with a little bit more information on it, like the boundaries of
Yeah.
this?
For me,
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I do
let's-
think it would, yeah.
So Tony, if you could do that, instead of actually moving the soccer field, would you leave it where it is? Because that's the bad place for it. And then if you could show the boundaries of the Flash Road Master Plan area, I think that would really do it. So we'd have three good pieces: the revised article, your site plan, and then the tie and bond proposal. Those are not necessarily going into the booklet, but they're to inform FinCom, which
Yeah.
is the
Yep.
responsible thing to do here.
Yep.
Okay, great. I'd like to next go on to, well, with the Heritage Trail, I did just add one thing here, which was the plantings in addition to the split rail fence as part of the sort of definition of the trail area. That was something that came up in the discussion. Next, on the Little League lighting, it's a lot of money, but I didn't hear the kind of critical inquiry that I did so much on the housing location study and the Bailey's Hill project. Barbara and Deborah, is that a correct characterization of your experience that evening?
Yes.
Yep. Yes.
Okay, then let's go on to the housing production location, excuse me, the housing development location study. I actually, this is my addition to what had been drafted, which was very brief, but I tried to actually make this more specific. So I'll just let you have a moment to read it. I don't need to read it out loud. And I'm actually putting a pin on the location because that was part of the real consternation. There were two elements of consternation. One, that the housing production plan had not been formally accepted by the Board of Selectmen or the Planning Board as yet. So therefore, why were we going for a location study? And if we're going for a location study, can we please identify the location? And then exactly what would be prepared as part of this study. So that's what I tried to address. Excuse me, Michelle, but I've just you know, taken a stab. I hope you're on. I've taken a stab of saying, hey, let's make this the property owned by the town of Nahant, adjacent to the Greystone Road Housing Authority property. So I'm on the edge of ice, but it's, as I said, it's putting something specific forward. And this is in anticipation of the meeting that is taking place, ironically, on Thursday evening at 6:30.
Would this be better saying a logical site or oh, so a logical site, I'm sorry, I was looking down here, a logical site. Or one logical site.
Sure.
Does that make a difference?
No,
Okay, then I'll leave
not
it.
to me.
Yep,
When
So,
we say one or more logical sites, for example, you know, Greystone Road the housing authority, Greystone Road, you know, in the vicinity of the housing authority.
but you're only saying one logical site here.
I know, but there could be an opportunity through the RFI, and if we can, you know, depending on who the selected partner is, that they could do 2 sites.
No, I
And we're trying to get the most out of our funding, and I want to illustrate that we're trying to, we don't want to spend, you know, the optics of this is someone's going to look at this and say, you're going to spend $60,000 on developing 2.5 acres. Is that the best use of our money? Whereas we can say we're spending $60,000 and we're going to try to get 2 sites with agnostic designs that we can use.
Right, but I'm saying if you say one or more logical sites, then you have to say whatever that second site is right here.
I don't know. I don't know if we do.
I don't think we have to. I think we just have to say our intent is to use the money this way. And if we are not, then we'll come back with a revised plan.
Well, if we, the approach here, well, I'm just going to talk it out a little bit with you guys, if that's okay. I know we're limited on time, but the approach here was, like Michelle said, we know that there are publicly owned properties, picked by the housing production plan as opportunity sites. There are also private properties picked by the plan as opportunity sites. We are not going to be pursuing any private properties, with this funding. But if there was a private property owner who was potentially considering a housing development and they see that we got this funding approved and we're going through this process, it might attract them to be part of it in a friendly manner rather than them attempting to build an unfriendly housing development. Now, I say that without any inkling or hint that there is somebody out there. We don't know, but we didn't want to shut the door to that possibility if there is. I doubt there is. We just wanted to kind of keep it open. And we certainly aren't going to identify any private properties because it would make it seem like we are pursuing those for redevelopment. And that's already been a hard enough challenge for us politically to defend that that's not our intent. We're not, as I just mentioned. So that's why we kind of wanted to leave it a little vague. We also don't know, we talked to Davis Square. I sent an email right before this meeting too. I'm sorry, it was right before this meeting with some of the details. And when I spoke with them, they said, a rough budget estimate of $33,000 to $42,000 for any single property. But if we have some time efficiencies, we could potentially study 2 sites concurrently for the 60,000. So we could, instead of spending 80 grand for 2 sites and 2 separate analyses, we could spend 60 grand to get 2 sites done at the same time. So that being said, talking through this, there's definitely some feedback from the FinCom that we heard that it seems like there's some uneasiness or uncomfortableness, with us not, being specific about which properties, we want to look at. If we're looking at public properties, the Greystone Road property seems to be, the best option for us to look at first. And so by providing at least that as some specific identified property, maybe it'll help with some of those, with that feedback that we got.
Would it also help, Tony, to show, and I know this is a bit like putting gas on a fire, but to show an example of what we mean by a location and design guidelines?
The part of that email I sent you was they sent me 3 different projects.
Okay.
I provided links to that. We could provide again this email, Deb and Barbara, you're on this email chain that I sent it at 6:59.
So
this
it's
could
fresh.
be forwarded. It was before, technically before the meeting started. This can be shared with the FinCom too for, additional background information. I'm hesitant to putting, these examples in the book or anything like that, because
No, I
again,
don't want to do that.
yeah, this is going to be a large public process again, where the public is going to have involvement in what these look like, or what different design elements and things like that. In that email, some of the bullets that they provided me, talked site visit, site analysis, zoning review, design of potential site plan options, coordination with civil or traffic engineers, meeting with planning staff to review design options, initial community meeting with site plan options, further design of building volume and facade studies, meeting with planning staff again, second community meeting, final report with written design parameters for inclusion with an RFP, and then coordinating with the writer of an RFP. The RFP, I think, really wouldn't, that's kind of like comes at the end of the process if we get to some sort of common goal through the public process.
I think it would be useful if this supporting statement called out more clearly the sequence of tasks. There was a lot of question at your meeting with us about which comes first, the cart before the horse. How can you get to this kind of level of detail until you know the site?
Right.
I think it would be nice to have, in fact, some bullets because it's more legible for, the sequence of the tasks that this study is going to complete.
So Tony, it's Michelle. So what you just described and what you sent over shortly before the meeting, those would be the bullets that we could leverage for this to help enhance the supporting statement.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually had included in the supporting statement specifics like, capacity of the site for single and multifamily dwelling, examining the site's capacity for new construction, creating guidelines for building design and character, along with landscape, pedestrian, and vehicular circulation. That is what I've seen in the past with this kind of design guidelines.
And I like that wording. So I would like both, some of the bullet points, but I do like, because that I can visualize that very easily. Character, landscape, pedestrian, vehicular, all of those things. I can see that and I can understand that. So I'd like us to keep that wording as well.
So why don't we expand this with the points that Tony very clearly articulated at 6:59 tonight as bullet points. And then he also gave 3 examples from their website. They look like they're project ideas or project pages. I'd like you to take a look at those if you could and decide if they're relevant. It's a little bit tricky because they all show multifamily, units. And, that implies where this is going versus perhaps a mixture.
But I
The
also,
the
what Deborah
Manchester by
said-
the Sea example, Tony, I think was from their website is very good. Sorry, Barbara.
oh, no, I was gonna say, I like what Deborah said, though, that right before, that we frame the bullet points by saying something about understanding. I don't know if I'm gonna say the specific or just the sequence, the necessary sequence,
Mhm.
so that people understand that there is a standard sequence that has to be gone through, that we don't just invent that. And that the bullet points would suggest that it's a technical thing again. That's what we're getting here, is we're getting the technical aspects of what you need to go through in a sequence to do this, plus your descriptive visualizations. I like both aspects of that.
The site, what came up in our meeting with you guys was the thorny point seems to me was the when in this process does the site identification, does that precede some of these details about
Yes.
specifications?
Yes.
Yeah,
But that's
the-
up to the Board of Selectmen. We would have to take their direction on which site they would want us to apply the funding towards.
So Michelle, can we get that decision made before this
No,
article?
no, because the plan has not been adopted by the Board of Selectmen or the Planning Board.
Well, what's it going to take? I mean, it's
Well,
been
wait.
months.
I know. So we're releasing the plan on Friday. We provided early copies to the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board. And so they'll have 3 weeks to look at it. And our hope is, the week of the 22nd, we have that vote in that meeting to go over final questions and public comments.
Okay, let me
So
get this straight in my head. So the 22nd of April,
Right, is the tentative week that we're looking to schedule that meeting of the joint meeting of the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board. However, it's after.
yeah, so after we have to
date-
submit these warrant items.
Exactly. So that's the problem. So this is where. So let me ask this question of Tony, and I don't know if this is possible. Tony, could we create the article in such a way, like we want to keep it broad yet specific, and I understand the need to, inform residents, but we can't inform residents of the site until the plan is adopted. And then the board makes it a direction to you to say, this was great work. We're moving forward. Here are the top 2 sites we want to look at and put design guidelines in. How can we create this article in a way that we're setting us the stage to funding, and what follows next will be that immediate action, but that action can't happen until after the plan is adopted. So we could put something in here that says at the time of when this article was prepared, the housing production plan was in its final stages and a vote was scheduled the week of April 22nd. Subsequently, we could put a 1-pager put forward at town meeting that brings this article up to date.
I think you just said it, Michelle.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm thinking about what you just said.
I know.
Sorry.
Now, I think you said it
guess
very
my
well,
point-
Michelle.
Sorry.
Can't,
No,
can't we say something like, we would be looking at sites, the town-owned sites such as
Yeah.
the property
here's-
at Great
That's
Stone
what
Road,
I
or
wanna say,
such
is-
as the Fox Road property.
right?
It's
Do the
it's
such
balance.
as.
I think I'm okay with that, but then you're balancing away from, I think, what I heard at the FinCom meeting, which I think is a small sample of what you would hear, potentially at town meeting, is this wanting to know what site we're leaning towards.
Right, yes,
And
it's
whether
fair
you're
enough.
gonna support the article might be based on that. And I think regardless of whether the housing production plan, you know, even though it hasn't been approved yet, through a, intense public process of looking at all the development sites, um, and ranking them based on ownership, developability, different layers of feasibility. Greystone Road scored the highest out of all of them.
Mhm.
And so, that's why I feel like it's a safe bet to lean a little bit, if we need to be more specific in order for people to feel more comfortable with this article. I think it's a safe bet to say, our if we follow the guidance of the housing production plan and the community feedback that we got, signs point to, exploring Greystone Road with this funding.
Fine, thank you.
Okay.
So I think we need
I don't
to,
know.
we need to redraft this accordingly.
Does that, I'd be interested to hear what Deborah and Barbara have to say to that.
I would like to see a really clear list, and I keep saying bullets, of the deliverables and the order in which they come for this plan that we're going to hire them for. And also, I'd like to see the timing and the ultimate responsibility for the site selection. I think the timing of the site selection was a hot button from that meeting that we
So
had.
we can't, so that's really hard to promise after the plan is adopted. That that would require us, to go again, to put some, schedule in front of the Board of Selectmen to say, in order for us to move forward with these design guidelines, we would need a decision by X. We're also butting against an election year and a new seat on the board as well. And so I don't think going into town meeting, there's going to be enough time for them to meet, to have those discussions, especially with a new joiner coming in potentially. So
I have one other question. Do the specs, the stuff that you list at the end of this paragraph, do they come first from the planners, and then they list the individual potential sites, or does the site get determined first?
The site should I have to jump in. The site should get
Yes.
determined first. And
Yeah.
that's what this is all winkling around. We need to say the site or these sites. And I was hoping, as Michelle has said, that it would be more than one site for this amount of money.
I agree. And I think the importance, I think what you're saying, Lynn and Michelle, about more than one. So I like the such as, but then somehow or other imply that it could be, hopefully might be two.
So
And
can't we say such as, and for, leading at the time this was written, leading sites being considered are Greystone Road, Fox Hill Road, and a third one. And
something like
trying to
that.
leave it open-ended so that, because we're making decisions on, that are the responsibility of the Board of Selectmen. With a new member potentially joining, we don't know if there could be some new idea that comes up that says, I like, I like A, but I don't like B and C. I'd like you to look at this site also. And that's the
what I think,
direction they
yeah.
give to Tony, right? So I don't want to speak for them until we've had engagement so we can, give them more
think-
information.
I completely hear you, and I don't necessarily disagree with what you just said, but I think you risk the the article passing. I
Oh,
think
really?
I just think that people want to know
Right.
what this money is going to. They don't want to just say, yeah, here's 60 grand and you guys can figure it out later. Yeah, and I know that that's a challenge we're going to face every year because the way of the cycle of CPC applications and then elections and then town meeting. So it's just, that's the balance. I'm not trying to be like difficult in this conversation. I'm just trying to talk it out.
Where you're playing devil's advocate, and I think that's important because I think people want to see, we want to see what we're getting for this 60 grand or however much it is going to be. And I think it's important to be very clear about their deliverables. I also think, and by the way, that you might possibly get questions, and you might want to think about this ahead of time, about the eligibility of the Coast Guard housing site.
Whether it's
So what do you-
eligible for this.
Yes.
What do you mean by the eligibility of the Coast Guard housing site? Those decisions have already been made.
What do you mean?
They're selling the property.
Well, I know, but if they're selling the property, is that not something that I mean, if they don't sell the property, what about that town-owned property as a place for affordable the housing?
It was listed as an opportunity site.
It is, yes.
It is listed as an opportunity site in the housing production plan.
Yes.
But it didn't rank as high as Greystone Road because there's already a voted upon plan by town meeting.
Yes.
Um,
I just think you may get the question. I personally concur.
yeah, no, I agree. I think that's kind of what was, again, that's why I think that was kind of what I heard through the lines at the meeting the other night was,
Well, any
what is
changes
this
to,
money going to?
so any changes to Coast Guard housing would require a new vote at town meeting.
It would, yes, it would.
Yes, that's
Right?
right.
Okay.
I
That's the
personally
answer.
feel, yeah, I do feel that it is raising a difficult subject, and I'm not sure why we would actually do this. You're saying you should be prepared in the presentation at town meeting to address it. And the way to address it is to say that it has been voted. There is a call on those funds to repay the debt for the acquisition of the property, as well as the recent removal and mitigation of the site. That's the story.
Correct.
It's a special town meeting.
I'm sorry?
Isn't it a special town meeting that we did that?
No, that was at an annual town meeting in 2021.
That was that vast town meeting under the tent. It was a very
Right, it's the original one.
lively
Right.
agenda, and it was.
I have another thought. I think one of the things that's part of FinCom's job, and that the town is going to be wondering, is if we talk about what this study will also do is address issues of the evaluation and valuation of projects on these sites, because it's going to be more expensive and also would bring in more in terms of what could be done with a site. And I think people are going to be wondering about what it's a deliverable outcome, sort of being able to judge how
To
the
the,
evaluation and valuations. Do you know what
to
I'm saying?
that, to that point, what this article does not do is authorize the sale of Greystone Road.
That's right.
Right.
The result of this study, if we came to a common goal and the financial evaluation of it was positive, you could then bring that to a town meeting for the town to vote on at a future date. It might be important to include that somewhere in the supporting statement that this is not, voting yes on this doesn't mean that you're authorizing the sale of the property. You're just authorizing the feasibility study of what could be done with that property to then be, potentially be voted on at a future date.
Thank you, Tony. That was brought up, and Barbara as well. That was brought up very specifically. What does this mean to the town financially? We are FinCom. So,
exactly. So the financial evaluation and valuation, that needs to be in there.
Mm-hmm.
But that isn't usually part of design guidelines. That is a
Anyway,
different.
I don't agree that a valuation of the properties is what we're asking here. All we're asking is design guidelines to understand if we were to construct something in these locations, we're making sure we're considering all the characteristics of the neighborhood as well as all of the potential or perceived environmental impacts that could happen as well. Right? The valuation piece, that's a separate step. And we have a town-owned land study committee that should be create an article that says, we'd like to go ahead and sell it. And we have, developers lined up or whatever, right? That's their charge.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was just trying to think, FinCom-y.
Yeah, no, but we could make that clear.
It come to FinCom if it in a separate article should the property come up for sale. But this is not what I'm trying to say is I don't want to add additional cost to this effort because it's going to come up later on and covered somewhere else.
But I think Barbara's point is well taken. It is natural to say, does this have financial implications to the town? And what does that mean? So in this article, could we be clear to say a next step would be to then move on to the town-owned land study committee for the with FinCom for the financial implications?
And I
Would
like
that make sense?
Yeah, I like implications.
Yeah, I like that.
Well, that's not really what the town and land study committee.
Well, then
They
it
don't
goes to
actually do
FinCom,
anything.
maybe it goes to the Board of Selectmen and FinCom. I don't care. I just,
Well, I don't necessarily, I mean, this study, I don't see why this study couldn't provide information once a design is established or something like that, why they couldn't provide us some sort of financial impact as part of it,
Financial
whether-
impact or a real estate assessment of the properties.
Can I interrupt for a second? Lynn, I do have to exit the meeting.
know
I'm
you do.
sorry. Good night, everyone.
good night.
night.
Sorry, Austin.
I'd have to
So
talk
now
to,
I'm
I'd have
without
to-
a quorum, so I just want to mention that to everyone.
I'd have to talk to Davis Square and see if that's something that, and we're not 100%, it's not like we've selected somebody yet, but they're the people that I talked to before. I'd have to see, what
That's
they
a-
would be able to do.
That's a real estate study. That's a whole other beast.
Yeah.
I have to say, and if I think about the process that we used with the Coast Guard housing, we did the design guidelines and then we sort of took it through the real estate analysis. That I
Okay.
think makes sense. I do think what I hear from FinCom is a concern that the town doesn't quite honestly undertake the redevelopment themselves. What's the exposure to the town financially?
Now, when you say, one question, when you say guidelines, do you really mean hard specifications? Pretty much, well, not hard.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, massing, materials, volume, proximity,
Right.
all of that.
Longer than guidelines, if you mean, if they're going to come up with what's necessary, the specifications. I mean, maybe they can just put guidelines, but I just wanted to be sure that that is what that means.
Did you see the example that I sent out on Thursday or Friday after the meeting, Deborah?
I don't,
James?
of what?
I actually sent the design guidelines for the military housing project, which was funded by CPC and was undertaken with Goody Clancy as the consultants.
I didn't see that.
So that
I
was a
hesitate.
separate,
I hesitate to put that out as an example to FinCom because I think it is gasoline on a fire. But for your information, I'd be happy to share it with you.
and Lynn, the real estate, like the evaluation of the cost of the project and what the cost of what the value of the real estate would be and what type of, I don't know, new growth tax impact, all that would be a separate study, or was a separate study when you guys went through the
Yeah.
military housing
Mhm.
process?
We did the design guidelines and then that was factored into an RFP that then had the financial requirements. And for instance, a basic financial requirement of that particular site was to repay the loan, was to generate enough revenue to repay the amount of money that the town had put out to purchase that property. So you set those
so there wasn't-
guidelines.
So when you went to town meeting for authorization to, sell the property and put an RFP out,
Mhm.
did you go to town meeting with some sort of deliverable that said, we expect to bring in X amount of revenue off of this sale?
Yep.
Mhm.
And in fact, 2 town meetings approved what we were doing.
But that was produced by a separate study than the design guideline study.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's good.
That's one model. That was just one approach, maybe
Yeah,
for $60,000, if we can factor in fact, the real estate calculations here, because that's what this is, probably would be helpful. I'm just saying it's usually not something that's done by the architects.
well, whatever, whichever way is the right way, but I do think, as Deborah mentioned, it's a question that the FinCom's, seeking to be answered and to be clear about as to when that deliverable would occur. And if it's not going to be part of this study, we should be clear about that.
So you know what
So-
this conversation is really pulling out for me?
Mhm. No,
We may not be ready to put this forward. There's and Michelle, and Tony, I say
know.
this with respect for the work that you have done chairing this committee, and Tony, for you being a very active participant. But with the hurdle that we have, that the plan hasn't been formally adopted by the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board, and therefore can go to town meeting, that we have these questions about the site, exactly what's in this study. I just wonder if we should actually look at withdrawing this article at this time and spend the time to really develop it in greater detail with the concurrence of the Board of Selectmen, the Planning Board, and other relevant boards.
I mean, we didn't have a housing production plan when the Coast Guard housing process occurred back in 2008,
We-
9, 10, whenever it was. So it's not.
We had
it's not like-
3 years, Tony, of working on it.
yeah.
And I'm jumping in like this because, and you can bring Mark Cullinan into that discussion, because Mark was the town administrator at that point. We actually had an initial consultant that's helped create a community process and engagement along the lines of what has been done with the Housing Production Committee. So it may not have been called that, but it was really specific to that site and to the opportunities that it represented to address affordable housing and community housing in Nahant. So it was probably 3 years in advance before it finally, before it got to the point of doing the design guidelines and going to the street.
If your goal is to make it a safe bet for this to be passed, I do think, Lynn, that your point is well taken. Because I think there will be a lot of controversy, and we don't know where that's going to end. What the result will be when it comes to a vote.
But I think to your point is the controversy is people want to know which sites, right? And we
Yeah.
can't make that determination until the Board of Selectmen has adopted the plan and they have met as a board to give that direction to the Housing Committee and to Tony. What we're trying to do is have funds set aside. So when they do make that direction, we're ready to move immediately into an RFP. So if we wait, so my challenge here, and it's just the way government operates right now and the way our town is structured, is that it will take us another year to 18 months before we either bring this article back, or unless there's a special town meeting in the fall, because there's housekeeping items that need to be addressed. And we can
And-
hopefully present that at this article at that time.
Yeah,
I mean, that may be in fact, and in fact, the time when I have to go back into distant memory, but when we did this before, I think we did have a special town meeting.
So Lynn, one
Yeah,
point of
for
clarification,
CPC.
wait a minute, Tony, one point of clarification. Lynn does not have quorum for this meeting, Tony. Can we actually continue this discussion?
I mean, I think you have like a half an hour from when quorum dropped off, but it probably would be
Yeah.
wise to stop. On that last part, Lynn, you did a special town meeting for CPC funding? Because
No,
isn't that's midway through the year? How would that even work?
we did a special, well, there was two. There was a really not very good special town meeting that was dealing with zoning in 2015 around the Coast Guard site. But before that, I believe, and I shouldn't say anything. My recollection is that there were special town meetings.
Hmm.
May I ask
Yeah,
one, may I ask one more question, a timeliness question? Michelle, are we under timeliness here, or Tony, we're under timeliness here in terms of the state pressure on us to come forward showing that we are proceeding, attempting to produce plans?
No. So having the housing and production plan adopted by the town and submitted to the state is the first step in our safe harbor activities. Showing progress is the next step, and progress can take many forms, and there are goals and strategies in the plan that help us get towards progress.
We
This
don't need
would
this
be
for
progress.
We don't need this for progress?
We do need it for progress.
That's what I meant by timeliness.
Well, it depends. We can look at other things within the plan and around the goals and the strategies to help make us show the state our progress. And the plan is effective for 5 years. So at any point within the first 5 years, something could happen, economics, real estate could change. We may have to go back to the plan and reset.
Mhm.
yeah, and it's possible that next year's annual meeting, we might be taking up the MBTA 3A housing
Right.
element, which could be another whole political hurdle. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I understand what you're saying, Lynn. My fear, and for certainly someone with a full plate, I don't know why I'm like pushing back. But my fear is that it wouldn't be like a 1 year postponement. It could be 2 years. It could be more. It could, withdrawing could derail it for a long period of time. But I understand your point.
Can I ask a question? Are there any other possible sources of money to consider? Does
Mhm.
anyone, since everyone's going through this whole mess, do they offer money to help people try to solve these problems?
I thought you had
Yeah,
that.
there are grants. There are grants through the state, planning grants through the state,
Mhm.
that we could apply for. Um, I think it'd be better for it to be funded locally. It would give us a little bit more control over the process, I think.
Well, I think we have a much better chance of having it be accepted if you take the hit of waiting a couple of months, even a year. I think you'll have a better story to tell, and there'll be more information that you can provide. And I don't think the time is particularly ripe, judging from the feedback that you got at our meeting.
I will say, yes, it was not an easy session.
No.
So I heard, I was there for the meeting and the feedback was very good. I guess the question I would challenge that on is FinCom may look at this article and may be against it. But I bet there's a large voter turnout that will say, no, we want the town to move forward because there's a strong desire to start trying to create housing opportunities for residents in the town. And if we don't start taking those steps forward, I think the board of selectmen and Tony's office are probably going to get the ire of residents in a different way.
I,
Thank
Yeah,
you,
I think-
Michelle, remember that FinCom can also take a neutral position. It's
And
not
that's
just
fine
being-
too.
It's
You know,
not
I
just
know
being
that.
a pro or a con. We can just say we're not gonna.
And
say
that's fine
anything.
too. I would prefer that the voters decide on what they want to do. And at least from so many meetings I have led for housing, other conversations and community engagements, there's such a strong desire for the town to try to create housing opportunities. When they look at communities like Swampscott and Marblehead that are trying to create housing opportunities through their own means, and then they look at Nahant and we haven't done anything, people, you know, and they don't want to move. That's the other thing. They just don't, and you can't blame them. So how, you know, I'm trying to find that balance, and this is, it's not easy. I mean, tonight is eye-opening because I was thinking about this meeting tonight, thinking, yeah, maybe we should wait, but Lynn
think-
raised it, so.
I
mean,
know.
I think
Sorry,
that the
Michelle.
The
No,
FinCom
don't be
meeting
sorry.
was-
These are the things that we have to work through.
No,
I
we
think
do.
I take a lot from the FinCom meeting. I take in a lot of the feedback that we got from the FinCom meeting. There was definitely a lot of conversation that happened there. To be honest, it wasn't the most difficult conversation that Michelle, has been a part of as chair of the housing committee over the last year. We've had none of this is easy. None of this is like, it's always gonna come with some difficult conversations. I think a lot of it was rooted in the uncertainty of the location. And and just to call it what it is, I think, the Coast Guard housing element is part of that, and whether that, could be influenced or not. And I don't know if we clear that up, if it solves a lot of those concerns. But I don't know if, I certainly didn't walk away from that meeting saying we have to withdraw. I kind of walked away from it was, how can we, be better at articulating this? Are there some decisions we have to make to kind of get it there? I don't know if I'm ready to just pull the plug right away, but I also understand that sometimes that might be the only option.
Tony, I agree with you. I didn't hear sort of ultimate negativity. I agree with you. I heard a lot of serious constructive questions, and the site issue was especially the one that we came back to over and over again. And Michelle, I strongly hear you, and we respect the energy and effort here. When you say people want things to move along, the other towns are doing more, and you're attempting to really keep us moving. I get that. Thank you.
Right, and Michelle, I will also say that to the extent that you have your finger on the pulse of the community and its wishes, I would support not only what you say about people needing it, but I would say that we aren't the be all to end all, and it may well be that the voters will go for it. Who cares what we say,
And I think that a lot of based on, being part of these meetings that Michelle has ran and done a phenomenal job at, and hearing kind of the feedback from people, whether it be in those meetings, in these meetings, or just people I talk to. And Michelle and I have had this conversation a lot. The hurdle is that we are in this phase of general conversation. What this study is going to do is take it from a general conversation to a specific, tangible idea that people can form an opinion on. So delaying that, getting to that phase, I don't think helps with the political discussion of housing in the town of Nahant. I think we are so eager to get to that phase because then we can actually, talk a little bit more in specifics, and it may eliminate a lot of the concerns that people have. Like a lot of people, when you're talking about housing development, it seems like people are so concerned about what they see being built on the Linway, being built
Right.
here in Nahant. But if you talk about, what was proposed at the Coast Guard housing, and it's, 15 townhouses, and they look like this and that, it's like, oh, that's not that bad of it. That's not too bad. So I think that's why I'm so eager to get to that phase, because it'll help with the overall conversation. But I agree, with, I hear what you're saying, Lynn and Michelle, about, rushing into it too.
Well, listen, our committee voted to put this forward, so I'm not taking that. I raised this in part to have this discussion. Only once in the 20 odd years that I've been doing this, and that's way too long, have I had an article that was not supported by FinCom. And I've always enjoyed, I've worked hard to try to make it possible for us to be collaborative. I was taking the input that I got that night from this article and other ones to say, how do we refine? How do we improve? How do we target our both the drafting of our articles and our ability at the town meeting to carry on a dialogue, because we will have that.
I do think,
So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, you please, Deborah, go ahead.
Again, the crux of the matter, to make things simple, is a list of the deliverables of what we're
Yeah,
paying,
sure.
the rest of
I
it.
think,
Well, I think we can definitely pull that together.
I think we can. I will ask, because I am now on way thin ice with Diane Dunphy in this, in this meeting. Is there a possibility, Michelle, of rescheduling the meeting that you had arranged for Thursday night so we could attend this FinCom? Because I have this drafting of articles that, I'm on a schedule for.
So so we can do a couple things. I don't know if we can move the meeting up earlier in the day and
Where-
maybe do the housing meeting before FinCom, or have FinCom meet first.
Well, you know,
Have FinCom, just hear me out. I'm talking, I'm trying to just generate some ideas. Maybe FinCom has their meeting from like 3 to 6, and then we meet at 6:30. So that gives you time to attend, and then FinCom can, have their time with the articles. But we can't reschedule to like another day or next week. We are on a strict timeline now that we've released an early copies of the plan. The committee needs to meet to go through what we have prepared, and we're going to publish it on Friday to the community with a 2-week comment period.
And that's all part of our contract, our amended contract with MAPC.
our meeting is not, the way it stands now, supposed to be dedicated to CPC. We're also planning to vote on the warrant articles. So maybe if we fine tune our timing for dealing with those things, we could find an intersecting period.
Are you guys meeting Tuesday, Thursday next week as well?
I think so,
You
Barb.
know?
That was proposed as a possibility. And we may not decide that until Thursday, but that was certainly, people were asked whether we could, and most people said we would be able to for next week if we needed to.
The idea that we were saying, I'm
Do
sorry.
you think it'd be possible to postpone the follow-up discussion on these 3 CPC articles until next week?
Oh, that's an interesting
That's
idea.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. Especially if we have a Tuesday meeting, we could dedicate it to those three.
Right.
You might want to get with Bob about that.
I can call him tomorrow.
That's
I
a
think
good.
that's a good, I think that's a good idea.
I mean, it's, you guys got plenty of other stuff too that you guys can use the time for, so
Right.
it's not like a loss of.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Michelle and committee members who want to attend that meeting, are you available on Tuesday?
I can attend. That's not a problem.
Thank you. The other article that I wanted to spend time on, and Trish, you have been very, very patient, was in fact the Bailey's Hill article. But at this point, given where I am in terms of this meeting, well, I should ask Tony, can I continue to just, we're not taking votes, we're simply discussing this. Can I
Lynn?
continue?
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Dave was. coming
Lynn,
in.
I just looked it up. It says, you only have 20 minutes if a member leaves and you don't have a quorum, so.
Yeah, I know. See, I thank you for looking it up, Dave.
Yeah.
I know I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble. Well, then Community Preservation Committee, I'm going to ask for a meeting on Monday night, the 8th, in advance of this meeting. And Trish, I promise we will start with your article. I won't put you through this. I hope you've been playing a computer game or writing a poem or a meditation of some sort. You've been listening to this. So, folks, thank you. Thank you, Ellen, for running the screen, Nancy for being here, Dave, Tony, Barbara, and Deborah, and Trish. Thank you. So Monday, the 8th at 7 o'clock, we'll resume discussion about the CPC articles. And then on Tuesday, the 9th, if I'm invited, Barbara and Deborah, we will be attending the FinCom meeting.
You're the star.
No, I'm not.
Yeah.
Michelle's a star. Tony's a star.
Lynn, I didn't have that on my calendar for next week, so are you gonna ask Paul to set that up?
I am, because that's his job.
Well, we better tell him like tonight so that we make sure it gets done. I mean, he's sometimes, if it doesn't get done.
He's
right
not well.
away-
He's not well. So I will actually check in with him tomorrow.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
it's Monday. Besides, it's April Fool's Day.
Mhm.
Come on. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so very much. Because we're not in quorum, I'm just going to say it's time to end the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing this with us.
Lynn, I'll send you the red lines that I made tonight.
Marvelous. Thank you, Michelle.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.